This Wednesday, the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America held a conference of senior officials of women's affairs and gender equality to discuss the challenges that women face in today's society. Argentina recorded its highest ever number of daily coronavirus infections on Tuesday, with new measures to be implemented to curb the spread of the virus. At least 87 people were killed and 191 injured in Sudan following strong episodes of intertribal violence in Geneva city in western Darfur state. English in Havana, Cuba. This is from the south. I'm Gladys Quesada. And now we continue and start the news because this Wednesday the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America held a conference of senior officials of women's affairs and gender equality to discuss the challenges that women face in today's society. The meeting, which was held virtually, was attended by high-level authorities on women's and gender issues from Venezuela, Cuba, Bolivia, Nicaragua, Dominica, Antigua and Barbuda, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The officials evaluated the progress and challenges in the construction of a fairer, more equal and inclusive society, with a particular focus on the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic and its impacts on women. Also discussed was the role of women in building alternatives to the neoliberal measures in the region.
Coup d'etat that we suffered in 2019 in our country, the coup against the constitutional government, against brother Evo Morales, after 37 years of democracy, unleashed not only massacres with assassinations, wounded, detainees, exiles, in addition to the huge number of human rights violations. There was a major setback in the struggle for the patriarchalization, for the decolonization, which resulted in some clear examples that we haven't been able to see, with some images, despite the restrictions and the media blackout that we experienced during the coup and the mediatized government.
And as part of the ALBA conference, Venezuela's Minister of Women and Gender Equality, Carolina Perez, condemned the unilateral coercive measures imposed by the United States and their impact on the access to health services for millions of women and also adolescents in Venezuela, Cuba, and other sovereign nations.
These coercive and unilateral measures constitute an act of violence against women and a flagrant act of violation of human rights.
Meanwhile, the Secretary General of the Federation of Cuban Women, Teresa Morelle, noted that ALBA-TCP member states have the challenge of seeking alternative projects to build sustainable development that guarantee gender equality.
The governments of ALBA-TCP have the challenge of seeking viable alternatives to strengthen unity and solidarity as fundamental principles to preserve peace, without which it is not possible to build development and sustainable projects, where all human beings have the same rights and opportunities without any kind of discrimination.
Peruvian transportation workers are holding a 24-hour strike due to the government's lack of response to their demands and the economic losses caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Trade union spokesperson David Mujica announced the strike action after failing to reach an agreement with the Urban Transport Authority. He urged the government to prioritize talks with sector workers, warning that the protests will be prolonged indefinitely if not. As the strike action began this Wednesday, local media reported that there were large crowds of people waiting for transport services, including health personnel and other essential workers. The strike comes just 4 days before the general elections to be held on Sunday. The Russian President Vladimir Putin met with Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan for talks in Moscow this Wednesday. The two leaders discussed the supply of Russia's Sputnik V coronavirus vaccine, as well as unresolved issues regarding Armenia's recent conflict with Azerbaijan over the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. The Armenian Prime Minister noted that while 15,000 doses of Sputnik V have been delivered to his country, over 1 million are still needed. President Putin explained there is a lengthy waiting list for the jobs in Russia, but noted that production volume is increasing. Pashinyan also referred to the issue of prisoners of war, hostages, and other detained persons yet to be resolved following the Russia-brokered ceasefire which ended the fighting in Nagorno-Karabakh. The United States government is set to resume a humanitarian fund of $235 million to Palestinians after the funds were previously halted by former President Donald Trump. The Biden administration, which has openly rejected Trump's decision, is seeking to restart peace negotiations with Israel suspended since 2014. The announcement was made by the country's State Department spokesperson, Ned Price, as part of an effort to repair the U.S. ties with the Palestinians that were affected during Donald Trump's tenure.
Plan to restart the U.S. economic development, security, and humanitarian assistance to the Palestinian people. It includes $75 million in economic and development assistance in the West Bank and Gaza, $10 million for peace-building programs through the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, and $150 million in humanitarian assistance for the UN relief.
And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Argentina recorded its highest ever number of daily coronavirus infections on Tuesday. The Ministry of Health reported more than 20,000 new cases in 24 hours, taking the total number of infections in the country to more than 2.4 million. The province of Buenos Aires recorded half of the confirmed cases, and the metropolitan area of the capital announced a critically high level of hospital bed occupancy. The data was released as the government evaluates different measures to restrict the movement of people in a bid to curb the rising infection rate. Health Minister Carla Bisotti said the measures will be intensive, temporary, and localized. Authorities stated the primary sources of infection are social gatherings and clandestine parties.
There are high-risk and low-risk activities, and the measures that have the greatest positive impact to contain the pandemic are intensive, transitory, early, and geographically localized measures to reduce the movement of people. We are working today, and in a later meeting with the province and the city of Buenos Aires, we are going to decide on the measures.
An expert from Brazil's leading public health institute has recommended the country adopt a strict lockdown to alleviate the severe strain of the health system caused by the coronavirus. The recommendations comes after hard-hit Brazil recorded its deadliest day yet in the pandemic, with more than 4,000 COVID-19 related fatalities, fueling mounting calls for a lockdown.
Fear that a new plateau of 4,000 to 5,000 daily deaths will form during the Brazilian winter if adequate measures are not taken. We need, at the same time, to introduce lockdown measures and offer people psychological support, money and food, because we are heading for a very difficult time. 70% of Brazilians support lockdown measures, so it is very dangerous to spread fake news, as the government itself is doing. It is not true that Brazilian people are against the lockdown.
Despite the calls for action to tackle the health crisis in Brazil, far-right President Jair Bolsonaro has reiterated his opposition to lockdowns, which he argues cause economic damage that is worse than the virus itself. Bolsonaro has defied expert advice throughout the pandemic, criticizing lockdowns, face masks and vaccines, even as the virus has claimed nearly 337,000 lives in Brazil, second only to the United States. But the president faces mounting pressure to get the situation under control, as the country is the global epicenter of the pandemic, while hospital intensive care units are at critical levels of occupancy in 24 of the country's 27 states. Chile approved the emergency use of the vaccine produced by China's CanSino Bio vaccine company on Wednesday, while restricting its distribution to people aged between 18 and 60. The director of the local regulatory authority explained that the age restrictions was due to a lack of studies of the use of this specific vaccine model in elderly people. Chile, which has vaccinated more than 7.1 million people, has already immunized an estimated 84% of people aged over 60. President Sebastián Piñera noted that the CanSino jab requires only one shot for immunization, thus helping to advance the vaccination campaign. The vaccine developed by CanSino is the fourth approved in Chile after those produced by AstraZeneca, Sinovac, and Pfizer. The director of the Pan American Health Organization has highlighted the increase in COVID-19 cases reported in South America, mainly in Argentina, Brazil, and Colombia.
Over the last week, the United States, Brazil, and Argentina were among the 10 countries in the world registering the highest number of new infections worldwide. In areas of Bolivia and Colombia, cases have doubled in the last week, and all 4 countries in the Southern Cone have been experiencing an acceleration in COVID-19 cases, with uninterrupted community transmission in recent weeks.
In Colombia, health authorities set up emerging vaccination centers in the Amazon region to immunize indigenous communities against COVID-19. This Wednesday, vaccination groups installed their equipment in the municipality of Inarida in the department of Huaynara. Doctors who traveled to that region emphasized that these indigenous communities are priority groups because of their high level of vulnerability to the emergency of the Brazilian strain.
The ministry gave priority to this area because of the Brazilian strain that is close because we have bordered with Brazil. Then they said vaccinate all the population over 18 in the city of Inirida.
Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez announced on Tuesday that new restrictions will be imposed as the country sees a surge in COVID-19 cases. The new measures were analyzed in a meeting between the President, the Prime Minister, scientists and experts to address the increase in numbers of cases registered over the past few weeks. These measures include quarantining communities with a high number of infections, increasing police patrols to ensure people are following the measures and the curfew, and the issuing of fines to those who do not comply with social distancing. In addition, the Ministry of Health explained that the presence of 5 new virus strains in the country, internationally recognized as highly contagious, is having an impact on the rising infection rate.
Deputy Prime Minister Morales, as we did with the first time round, to summon all the institutions involved to analyze each measure that will be implemented, what needs to be done in each case, and on Thursday we will present and approve them, with the coordination and consideration of all parties, and the measures will be approved following that. We have to coordinate a Mesa Redonda program afterwards to inform the population of the plan.
Spanish authorities announced they will reserve the AstraZeneca vaccine for those aged over 60, after the EU regulators said blood clots should be listed as part of a rare side effect of the jab.
To account the information available, to date, as a precautionary principle, it is recommended that the AstraZeneca vaccine be used in people aged 60 and over. This proposal was made by the Interterritorial Council and was approved by a large majority. Therefore, the vaccination strategy will now change from the AstraZeneca vaccine, and people over 60 will be vaccinated.
The World Health Organization issued a statement on Wednesday that recognized that there could be a link between the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine and also rare blood clots, but noted this is not yet confirmed. The WHO's Global Advisory Committee on Vaccine Safety noted that a causal link is considered plausible, adding that the events under assessment are very rare, with low numbers reported among the almost 200 million individuals who have received the AstraZeneca vaccine across the world. Earlier on Wednesday, the European Vaccines Agency confirmed that cases of blood clots with low blood platelets were associated with the administration of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine, but should still be listed as very rare side effects. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Sudan, at least 87 people were killed and 191 injured following strong episodes of intertribal violence in Jenaina city in western Darfur state. The latest clashes erupted from a shooting last Saturday that killed 2 people from the Masalit tribe in a camp for displaced people. After the event, there were clashes between members of the Risegaid and Masalit tribes, both with armed mobilization. Last Monday, Sudanese authorities declared a state of emergency and sent military personnel to the region with the aim of controlling the situation. For their part, the Central Committee of Sudanese Doctors reported on Wednesday a shooting at vehicles transporting health workers to the UN warehouses in Jenaina without reporting fatalities. In Mozambique, local campaigners have called for more support for children in the northern Cabo Delgado province following the recent insurgent attacks on the coastal town of Palma. Violence has forced at least 11,000 people to flee the strategic town, the hub of a giant gas project featuring foreign investment, with thousands more reported to be trapped inside the area. Those fleeing the violence have been arriving to different cities of the country by foot, road and boat since March 24th, in the aftermath of the attacks. Experts have warned that the experiences of violence can have a long-term impact on children's lives, which must be addressed. Based on testimonies from people abducted by the rebels and mothers of children that were kidnapped in the area, a lot of minors were kept in camps where insurgents live and trained to work for them.
We are afraid. There were different kinds of kidnappings taking place. Sometimes it was said that there were women abducted, but actually there were a lot of people being kidnapped. And in the middle of those people, there were children, so we are afraid. Some of the people that went to that place, the camp of the insurgents, they saw children. It is not just to send them to the school, and that's it. They need a follow-up, they need proper food, extracurricular education, accompany their families, and monitor how they are spending their time.
As people in Benin prepare to head to the polls on Sunday for the presidential elections, opposition sectors have held a series of demonstrations, setting up roadblocks in the center of the country. Tensions have erupted in several towns around the West African country since Monday night, in the lead-up to the Sunday's ballot in which current President Patrice Talon is strongly favored to win a second term. Opponents claim the vote is already rigged in favor of the president first elected in 2016. Benin has long been applauded as a strong multi-party democracy, but critics argue that under Talon, the country has veered into authoritarian. Talon is running against 2 little-known rivals, Alassane Soumanu and Corentin Kurohue. Meanwhile, government officials have dismissed opposition calls to rally in the streets and said the election will go ahead without any problems. According to Ethiopia's water minister, the ongoing diplomatic dispute with Egypt and Sudan over its mega dam on the Nile River won't result in an unnecessary war, following the latest round of talks of the project in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam has been a source of tension between the neighboring nations ever since Ethiopia began its construction in 2011.
To enter an unnecessary war. A war can't start because of water. Water flows if you fight today. It will continue to flow tomorrow. We don't know what will be tomorrow. Therefore, this kind of thinking is unnecessary, and exaggerating this kind of thing doesn't benefit any country.
On Wednesday, Rwanda marked the 27th anniversary of the 1994 genocide, while the role of former colonial power France in the violence is yet to be fully established. In an exclusive interview for TeleSUR, freelance journalist Rosa Moro highlighted that while a group of European experts prepared a report on the occasion of the anniversary, it offered little new information.
The report made by a group of experts, not experts in the Rwanda case, but experts in completely different European and French fields. It is a report that was commissioned 2 years ago, and they presented their conclusions on March 27th, on the occasion of the upcoming anniversary of the beginning of the Rwandan genocide on April the 6th, with the attack of the presidential plane on April the 6th. So, on such occasions, it is not the case that they have declassified any information. It is rather a report of 1,000 pages, very difficult to read in its entirety, and it is based on archives that France already had.
On Wednesday, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani described Tehran's nuclear negotiations with world powers in the Syrian capital as a new success for his country.
Nuclear agreements have concluded that there is no solution better than the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the 2015 nuclear deal, and there is no path except through the full implementation of the deal. The way I see it, nuclear talks in Vienna is a new success for the Islamic Republic of Iran. A new and fresh chapter started yesterday if our other party, meaning the US, shows seriousness and honesty. We want nothing else. We just want enough determination and sincerity. If they show such behavior, we can negotiate within a short period of time within 4+1 countries if necessary.
And we stay in Iran, where a spokesperson for the foreign ministry confirmed an explosion occurred on board of the Iranian-owned Savis ship in the Red Sea on Tuesday. The explosion took place at around 6 a.m. local time of the coastal town of Djibouti. The vessel was partially damaged by the blast, and an investigation is underway to determine the cause. The spokesperson also noted that the ship is a civilian vessel that was in the region to ensure the safety of navigation and fight maritime piracy, acting as an Iranian logistics base. No deaths or injuries occur as a result of the explosion. At least 182 people were killed following the passage of tropical cyclone Saraja in Indonesia and East Timor. According to Indonesia's disaster management agency, the death toll stands at 140 in East Nusa Tenggara and West Nusa Tenggara provinces. At least 61 others have been reported missing in the flash floods that affected the region. Heavy rain that continued for 9 hours caused dams in 4 sub-districts to overflow, inundating house and rice fields. Meanwhile, executive authorities in East Timor reported the death of 42 people due to the natural disaster. Both countries warn of continued rainfall in the coming hours. And we have come to the end of this news brief, but remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.